Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Just to introduce the class a little bit, I hope you guys look at the outline. I am actually using this class or this webinar to talk a little bit about how I look at the garden. And usually what I do is I see the amount of questions people ask me, my clients and everybody. And like that, I kind of like share this information with the bigger group, which is you guys in this platform. And try to also learn from you, as well as share whatever I am doing and I have learned. So one of the things about fall that is important for me, like in my work, fall is kind of like the end of the year for me. So I do a lot of assessments. So that is one of the things I'm trying to show you how to do in the way I do it. One of the things I had learned in this, my experience is the more I know, I realize that I really know that much. So I try to learn as much as I can. And that's what I'm trying to share with you guys. So we are going to have the pruning, even though it was put as a pruning class, we're going to have the pruning way at the end. I am going to talk a little bit more and emphasize in this class is especially in the health of the plant and the health of the garden. And how do I approach that in every single garden that I have been doing now. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we have been dealing with drought, and a lot of plants are showing drought stress. So if we have a good methodology in our gardens throughout the year, our plants are going to be more resilient. So instead of, that for me is kind of part of the pruning. I usually say to people, if we have a healthy plant, I can do way more in the pruning and in the production that if I have a weak plant. Pruning is not the solution when I have a weak plant. So that's why I'm doing the class the way I'm doing it. So hopefully people doesn't get disappointed because most of the class is going to be talking about how we improve the health of the plants and not so much about pruning. Okay, this is not working. Okay, so the first thing that I want to try to emphasize right now is what do we do in fall. So we have the fall cleaning. And one of the things that I do is try to minimize fungal diseases such as powdery mildew and leaf blotch to overwinter in our dead plants. So removing annuals and removing the veggies that are looking tired and brown is important, because I am reducing how the situations where they can live on in the garden. The other one, for example, is, let me move this away from my screen. The other one is cut back perennials like peonies and hostas and dahlias that are gonna also protect eggs and pests, and they're gonna become houses for pests and diseases to stay in the garden. So usually what I do is, as the picture is showing, I cut a lot of these leaves 2-3 inches from the ground, removing everything. And as do it in fall is kind of like important, for example, is because snails go to the ground in fall and start putting the eggs. So if I do that way before, like we know that snails love to hide under these leaves. So if we remove that, we not only remove the snails going down into the soil, but we also remove all the protection that the eggs are going to have and everything. The other one is cleaning up the leaves. A lot of people ask me, can I compost the leaves? Can I use them as a mulch? So this is what I usually say to people. If you already have a disease like powder mildew in your trees or your shrubs or thrips in your, so then you do not want to use these leaves. You want to remove them from the garden as soon as possible. Because again, they are going to be places where the diseases and the pests are going to overwinter. So I am a lot of the times we hear them, oh, just throw them away, put in the garbage. You don't even need to put it in the garbage. You can actually put it in the green cans, because in the most cities will use hot composting, meaning the compost gets to a temperature level that is high enough that will kill all these diseases. So everything that you want to do is involve removal of these leaves if you already have a pest and a disease that is in your garden. If you have, like a maple that doesn't have any pests or any diseases, so yes, you can use this. You can leave your leaves as a compost or mulch. So the other one is removing the fruits. I know that that is kind of like something that a lot of people have problems, because in some cities, they don't want the whole bucket full with pears or apples or whatever, but this is a really important steps to do in your garden, because that will minimize a lot of the pests and a lot of the diseases. All the fruit that is in the ground or in the tree that has been damaged by anything, any a bird or rat, or that it has been there and is getting mummified. I have example of the mummified fruit that is going to produce spores that is going to spread around. So it's really important that we actually take the time to clean those and not just leave them there until the end of winter to clean them. The sooner that we clean, the better that we are preventing all these pests to stay here in our gardens. Fertilization. So one of the things I get asked a lot on how to fertilize. And I know I'm calling myself a little bit of a rebel when it comes to fertilization, because I take the time to read about like every single item in the fertilizer, what it can do, what it doesn't. And I try to work things out, and I not necessarily go and say, well, you have a citrus, put citrus fertilizer, or you have a tomato, put veggie fertilizer. I use the fertilizers in different way according with the materials that they are inside, and I'm going to show you that. And I hope that I can explain my mind and my actions, and it will be helpful for you in the long term. So I don't go straightforward, but I have a reason why I do things. So in fall, it's really important to fertilize. A lot of the deciduous plants are storing energy in the root system, and that is something that we wanna take advantage of. So when we put fertilizers, or when we feed our plants, period, so then we are helping that tree for that spring growth for next year, and for the flowering and then the fruiting. The plants that are ready for cold temperatures, now it's like we have, so gardening, the landscapes in homes are being really influenced by a lot of things that happen in agriculture. So one of the good things that happen in agriculture is that they're getting really specialized and really improved, so now we have actually fertilizers that help plants to get ready for cold temperatures, and we can use these fertilizers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Then we have the rains that helps mobilizing and the absorption of these dry fertilizers if we're using dry fertilizers. And this reminds me of something that I want to put out. Like last year and the year before, in fall, I was a little bit scared of talking about fertilizing because we were in a drought. So one of the things about fertilization is that when we are in drought situations, we have to be a little bit more mindful in how to fertilize and what do we use, because in drought, the plants are, when there is drought, plants are in a sort of like stress, I guess. It's not really a stress, but they are kind of like tiptoeing around pretty much. So if we go and put a lot of fertilizer, or we put really strong fertilizers or synthetic fertilizers, it can do the other effect. It will not help the plant as much, and it will burn the plant, or the plant will be showing some yellowing. So a lot of the times when you have plants that the veins are getting yellow, and kind of like the leaves are cooling down, and if you had fertilized before, so that may be that you put too much fertilizer, that maybe you didn't water enough, that the fertilizer was the numbers of the fertilizers were a little bit too high for the plant, like if it's in a pot. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers later on, but I want to make sure that we are conscious in fertilize in fall, drought versus fertilizing fall when it's raining, like we are having it right now. So just be a little bit mindful of that. Fertilization of the fruit trees is important because we're going to fertilize for next year. And this is my combo. So right now, this year, I have a lot of people calling me for consultations throughout July, August, and September. And the most common questions is, the trees were looking a little tired. The trees earlier, you know, like they were doing whatever it was doing in fall. Some of them were doing it already in July and August. They were losing some of the leaves. They were even evergreens were dropping a lot of the leaves. They usually do it later on in fall. So I saw that pattern. I saw less growth throughout the year. And so plants are showing this stress from, you know, I think it's 3 years already that we are going through this drought. So plants are really slowing down and showing signs of it. So one of the things I do is I try to make sure that people not only use fertilization as feeding the plants, but remember that like a more holistic or integrated way to look at it is, let's look at our soils. You know, when I was studying my second semester, I took soil class, and that was something that the teacher said that I was kind of like, what? And I dismissed it. And he said, you know, healthy gardens, the health of the garden is based in the soil. And I didn't understand it, and I actually didn't even believe it at the time that I heard it. But with time, and I start realizing there is a truth on that. I may not be able to connect it and understand it. My brain is too little for that or something, but there is a truth on that, and I am living it. So I had been like a really strong advocate in making your soil better. So the more healthy your soil is, the more healthy your garden is gonna be. It's not like there are not gonna be diseases and pests going around, but your garden is gonna be able to sustain, be healthy, and the diseases are not gonna destroy your gardens of your plants. So the way that I am, for the plants that I was called to consult about, oh, my plant is not looking good. A lot of the plants this year in general, they didn't produce a lot of fruit. Like that was something that I got called to go and look a lot. A lot of the trees that they were looking kind of like stressed already. So what I did was I kind of like generated this little combo here that I'm putting for you guys. And it's kind of like, okay, we're gonna do like do it all for the plants right now, and we are gonna help the plants by making the soil way better. So I am putting fertilizers. So I did fertilization I am using like an all-purpose fertilizer. I am doing an organic fertilizer. And the reason why I'm doing that, and I'm gonna go in detail later on, organic fertilizers are things that help the soil. Not only feed the plants, but feed the microbes and help the soil to become better soil. So, and then, you know, I use fertilizers that have mycorrhizae, or I put both of them, or I put one of them. So the whole idea is that I am feeding all these microbes that are there, that I'm helping not only the tree, but anything that is complements that tree. So that mycorrhizae, we know that helps plants get water to them. So even if the mycorrhizae, because it's such a connecting tissue throughout all the root system of the plant, so if you have it in your garden, it will find the water and bring it to the tree, pretty much. So I am putting, for plants that are looking really sad, I am putting one fertilizer that is like an organic fertilizer with a lot of the micronutrients, primary, secondary, microbes, everything that I can put that is healthy for the soil. I'm also adding compost, and I am doing a compost that really like ready to use compost. I use something, for example, the mushroom compost, or I use, if you know, some people don't like the smell of mushroom compost because it comes with manure. So I use the grape seed compost, something that is really heavy, dark, and actually hot. It's called hot, it's just because it has some temperature there because it's so rich. So I'm using compost, I'm putting the fertilizer, the mycorrhizae, I am putting a good layer of compost, maybe 3 inches of layer of compost, and then I put the mulch on top. And maybe I go a little bit easy with the mulch, I don't put 3 inches, because then I'm building up my soil too much, but maybe I can put 2 inches of mulch. And the reason why I'm doing this combo is this combo works really well. And with time, you're gonna realize that you are, so putting the mulch helps the compost. And the reason why I put the fertilizer before the compost is because I want that clay soil or sandy soil to get that first boost and to have that mycorrhizae right there, because that is the soil that I'm treating. The compost is gonna be a help, and the mulch is gonna be the long-term help for everything. It's gonna protect the compost not to dry out. It's gonna protect from weeds that the compost may have to don't come out. So this is something that this fall I did in few houses. I know that mulch is forbidden in some cities, but if you put it just in the area that the plants are around the drip line of the plants, pretty much all the way until the foliage is going, or certain beds, it doesn't have to be the whole garden. I think that this will really, really help the long term, the health of your soil. So this is a combo that I say, if you can do it, that will be something that I will say to you, do it. You don't have to use the specific all-purpose fertilizer from Happy Frog. No, you don't have to. You can use something that you like, that it is organic. And the reason why I say emphasizing organic fertilizer is because they are really good. Actually, I have it here. So one of the things,
Elizabeth,
yeah.
May I interrupt just a sec? Couple of questions about what you've been saying here that we have already. One is an interesting one. How do you feel about cutting off annuals at ground level rather than pulling them out so that you leave the roots in the ground?
I usually remove them from the ground if I see that they have any like long-term disease. So like if you have like no long-term disease, like powdery mildew or something like that. If I am gonna leave the root system in the ground, I am just gonna make sure that nothing is not being used as a host. So, but I think that a lot of the root systems are good just because, you know, they will decompose. So it's part of nature.
And Michelle asks about what is not to be fertilized in the fall. Are you going to talk about that?
Yes.
Okay, fire away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great.
At your leisure.
Oh, okay. So yeah, most. So actually it was here. So one of the things I did, the reason why I put most plants, thank you for asking. That's why I love questions. One of the reasons why I put here most plants is because one of the plants that you don't want to fertilize in fall is succulents. Succulents are, have a hard time with winter, with cold weathers, with humidity. So, you know, like some of the succulents are, you know, like in the deserts, and in the deserts get really cold during the winter, but at the same time doesn't have that constant humidity in the air. So we have a lot of succulents that get really cold and start getting powdery mildew and stuff like that. So that's why I don't fertilize succulents in fall. That is the one plant I don't. So now we're going to talk about fertilizers just in general. So we had organic fertilizers versus synthetics. And one of the, I'm going to go really quick to this, but I want to make sure that you understand. It's not like I don't like synthetic fertilizers, and I use synthetic twice. One, I didn't know it was synthetic, and I did learn my lesson. And two, sometimes you have to use them. You just be mindful of how you use them, be super precise in following the directions. So organic fertilizers are a slow release. So when we put them, the plant takes some time to take it in, and it also stay there in the ground for longer. So that is for us a good thing. That is for the plant is a good thing, because not necessarily the plant is feeding everything at the same time. And so that is something important. The fast absorption the synthetic fertilizers, they absorb really fast. And the one thing is that they will move really fast. And so that's why I put ocean acidification. So synthetic fertilizer is something that I'm really careful to put in, for example, drought. When we were going through the drought, I was asking people not to put synthetic fertilizers, use something else, but do not use synthetic fertilizers, because plants can show burn right away. Now I am asking people, now that it's raining, I'm asking people to be really mindful of using synthetic fertilizers. Is because of the ocean acidification. And not only that, like we are having problems with algae in the lakes. Well, that is due to synthetic fertilizers. They move fast and they end up in our watershed. So just be mindful of that. The synthetic fertilizers will not burn the roots of the plants. The organic fertilizers. The synthetic fertilizers do, and I have. That's one of my experience with a synthetic fertilizer. It was one of first client that I had when I started in this business, and my client was telling me what to do, because I didn't know anything. So the whole idea with working for her was that she will teach me how to do things. And one day she came and said, okay, just get these fertilizers. These are 3 bags, really small bags that she gave me to put in a whole garden. And she said, you just spray it around, just spray it around. And I exactly did that. And I didn't realize, next day she called me and she told me that I had sprinkled this thing around, but it was supposed to be in the soil, and it had touched the leaves. So every leaf had a mark, or burn mark, black. So the whole garden had all the leaves burned. No, the whole leaf, but wherever those really the granules are, that is where the burn was. So it's really important we realize that the plant can get burned. One of my clients made a mistake with the calculation of how much he should put in the citrus, and the citrus just lose fully the leaves. The leaves look like somebody had thrown a bag of chips under the citrus, and because he kind of like put like 3 times whatever he had to put, so it was a big mistake. It was a lot, but at the same time, you know, like you can see it was right away. In 2 days the tree was already defoliated, and it didn't survive, to be honest with you. But the whole point, it was a big mistake, but the whole point is that you can burn every single part of the tree if you made a mistake with that one. And it doesn't have to be a big mistake. I made that mistake once. The second time I used synthetic fertilizers, I had to use it. These olives were doing really bad. I couldn't figure out how to improve the health. I couldn't, organic were not doing the trick. So I went with synthetics, and right away, like, it became really good. My clients called me, they are happy. And 4 months later, they call me and they say, you know, the disease is back. The plants are looking really yellow. And when I went there, I saw that, yes, at the beginning, the plant grew and everything. And then I have iron deficiency, like right away. So there is that. It will unbalance your soil. It will leave salts in the soil, and it makes the tree, it is harder later on when we use synthetic fertilizers for the plants to get the rest of the nutrients that they need. So just be aware of that. So the number 3 is, you know, organic fertilizers have more than just the primary and secondary plant nutrients. So we want to have micronutrients, we want to have humic acid, we want to have microbes, we want to have mycorrhizae, we want to have as much as we can in our fertilizer to help the soil, because in the long term it's going to help the plant. The synthetics, they don't, they just go with whatever you NPK is. So NPK is the primary nutrients in the fertilizer, and then usually the synthetics will only have that, and or if you have a specific, they can give you sulfur, that's it. They can give you magnesium, that's it. And sometimes you actually need 2 of the things. So to get the phosphorus, you need the magnesium. So you need to get the phosphorus, you have to have certain other secondary nutrients to be able to get absorbed. So that is part of being the importance of that. And also now with technology, and I'm going to go a little bit through that, we have now really specific fertilizers that can help the tree in different ways, or the plants in different ways. Other things is we can use liquid versus dry. Liquid, the organic fertilizers go a little bit faster in for the absorption of the plants. When you put any or all of these fertilizers, you want to water really well before and after you put the fertilizer. That is going to help the plant to absorb the fertilizer better. Yeah, so how you can see, we have way more benefits using organic fertilizers in the short and long term. So now, right now that I say, yeah, one of the things that we do in fall is fertilizing. A lot of people are like, well, okay, what do I do? How do I fertilize? So this is how you can assess the plant health, and maybe like that you can adjust and use a specific fertilizers. So one of the things I look at my plants is how much foliage it has now. And the reason why I put now is because the one thing I try to do is in fall, I look at my plants right after a really strong storm. And the reason why I do that is because that is the time where So in fall, sometimes plants are holding the leaves, but they are not really doing much because they are more like done than alive. And so the first rains, big storms, really clear that out. And then you can really look at your plant. So in this, for example, I have here in the pots, in the grouping of pots, there are some blueberries. These blueberries, you can see one of them is fully naked. They are all in the same place. They are all planted at the same time. They are all watered at the same time. And one of them is growing thick, full, like having some fall color, but it took, and the other one is fully naked. And that happened right after this really strong storm. So that is telling me, okay, well, which one is more stressed? This is the time to look at them, because you can say, okay, now I know that the one that the smaller one is not only small because, you know, it's struggling, but it's actually showing me way more stress now. So it's a really clear sign right now after a storm. Then you want to look at where your leaves are, you know, it's partially defoliated, it's fully defoliated. Where are my leaves in my tree? So usually if the tree is, so for example, if we have from 1 to 10, that is our ruler to look at a 0 or 1 being really stressed, 10 to be really happy. So in the blueberry example, this blueberry is in the 2, 3 of unhappiness, in the number 2, 3 of unhappiness, and we want to try to do something for it. And then in this one, this is one of my bonsais. It's a Chinese elm, and this good. So I can see that it's also kind of like in the stress side. I will say this is in the 5, in the number 5. If I have to give you kind of like an assessment with numbers, an idea. And so in this case, why I'm saying that, because it still have some of the leaves, and the leaves are still green, but the leaves are in the part of the tree that is the strongest. So the strongest part of any plant is the outer section and the top section. And that is where my leaves are in this plant. So that means this plant got stressed this year somewhere around, it got stressed, and it's showing me right now after that whole, like that strong rain. So it's really important to kind of know that, look at the foliage of the color. So in this case, for example, I have the citrus, and the citrus, you know, it grew, it has been growing, so it has some growth throughout the year. I have not seen any flowers in this one. This is in my house. This is in my condo, so it's not mine, but it's in my condo. And then it has some, it has no fruit, and that was planted maybe like 3, 4 years ago. So one of the things that I wanted to do is help this plant, and my fertilization is going to be right with it. One of the things about having a citrus, any citrus that is this color at this time of the year, what I am thinking is, okay, this citrus is going to be, it's going to have a hard time throughout winter, because in winter, they are usually, if the citrus is like that in February, March, I understand, because they went through winter and some of them get like that. But if my citrus is coming to winter looking like that, I want to try to do something. Even if I can move it and put it in a place where it's a little bit protected, that will be even better. But if you cannot move it, so then I am going to do something like, okay, I'm going to add this acid mix down to earth fertilizer. And why I'm adding this? Not because it needs more acidity. It's because I put it here, fall applications promote root growth, and this fertilizer in a specific boosts the resistance to extreme weather temperatures. For extreme winter temperatures. So that is one of the things I want my plants to be able, or my fertilizers to be able to help my plants, not only feeding, but helping them go through hard times. I am gonna put a little bit of compost because I want this tree to still put some of those feed the micronutrients and help that soil and head that water retention. And maybe if the root system is showing, this is the time that I can come and add compost to those pots where, or even in the soil, in the ground. If you see that your plants are showing some of the root system off, so I put extra compost in those sections, and even a little bit of mulch. In this case, for example, this is the same plant and this is another way to do it. So a lot of the times we have things that you don't get in a gardening supply, but it works really great. So this is one of the things one of the combos I try to do a lot. So I do put a little bit of, I can put a little bit of a fertilizer. So I use this organic fertilizer with the mycorrhizae. The numbers are 3, 1, 2. The NPK is really little. And the reason why I use it is because, again, I'm working in the soil as well as I'm feeding it. And then I can use and this is dry. So then I will use the kelp help that promotes root growth and boosts resistance for winter temperatures. So that is another one that is liquid. I will use liquid because like that, I am giving that direct food, like to the plant, rapid absorption, that the other example I gave you. And then I will use Epsom salts. So the Epsom salt is not something that you buy at a nursery, but you buy it anywhere else, Safeway, whatever. I had been using it for a lot of citrus for getting back that green coloration, producing flowers and fruits. Is something that you will not burn the plant if you put it on. So usually what I suggest to people, for example, for this example, I will say do a half cup, dissolve it in 3 gallons of water, and then put that water on the tree. So you can do those 3 things for this, and you can do that from November to March, the Epsom salt. You can do the kelp help ones, and you can do the primary ones right now in fall. And that will help your tree go throughout winter. So there are like 2 ways. This was one way, and this is another way.
Question. If my citrus looked like this one, but it did have fruit on it, would you still treat it the same way?
With these fertilizers? Yeah. If it's producing, yes, I will. So the only difference with no fruit and fruit is that the Epsom salts does help for the production of the flowers. So you are gonna see a lot of more flowers. And sometimes the problem with having too much flowers is you have too much weight on the plants. Maybe what I will adjust is how, like maybe I will put 1 or 2 times the Epsom salt, and I will not go all the way to March. But that will be the only thing that will get affected.
Thank you.
So now we're going to talk about pests and disease. And the reason why I go to that again is all about the health of the trees. So one of the things that I base my company in how I approach the situation, I mean, you can totally guess, it's not a joke. My company is called Go With Nature. So I want to try my best to work towards the long term of the health of the garden and nature. So the IPM is Integrated Pest Management. You can look at it, it has a lot of information, and I'm just trying to use just a little bit here. So you can look at it and you see IPM if you need to identify anything. So anyway, it's there, look at it, it's really interesting, it's really fun. So one of the things is how they are describing what that integrate means. So integrate is kind of like they are telling you, do little steps, you know, before you do chemical. So they have the little steps by doing 1, biological control, 2, cultural control. If you realize I kind of like change this a little bit. And the reason why I changed this is because I also do gardening design, and I realize a lot of that cultural control can be done when you are doing your planting, you know, because cultural controls can be by, you know, like making the plant happy in the place. So I can like change this a little bit according with my, you know, being again the rebel, how I see it works for me. I do get a lot like low watering, low maintenance, you know, like, so I'm gonna be aware of this is part of what I can do way before the pest is in there. That is how I'm looking at cultural. Is how they said it is reduce the pest, stability, reproduction, dispersion, and survival in the garden. But how I'm looking at cultural is let's don't even invite them here. So the cultural control, how do I'm doing it? By improving my soils. How do I improve my soils? By doing my combo that I showed you before, the organic fertilizers with mycorrhizae, with microbes, with compost, with mulch. Reduce over planting. You know, like that is something that we see a lot. I get called for doing like garden maintenance schedules a lot. And one of the things is overplanting. I think that air circulation is kind of something that we wanted to emphasize because it helps for pests not to get established in your garden, not to make a home in your garden. Use the right fertilizer again, you know, like there are fertilizers that help plants to generate more root systems. So for planting, that is great. A smart start from EV organics, all these things you can get them in slots. So it's not like so difficult to get. It's just knowing that they are there and that they exist and that we can use them. There are fertilizers. I think that the aim is that there are fertilizers that have calcium on them, and that helps the plant to protect from pests. So there are like a lot of now technology in fertilizers had advanced a lot, so that I am really happy about it. The same thing with pesticides. So you're gonna see. So cultural controls, we're gonna have plant the right plant for the right microclimate. So, and the reason is, yeah, if you have a plant that is a sun is supposed to be in the sun and you plant it in the shade, you are putting the plant in the wrong, like not the happiest conditions. So the plant can get stressed and diseases can attack, and the plant, because it's not happy, is not gonna be able to survive or live with it, or, you know, like, so it is really important that we actually do that. The plants that are susceptible, we had, like, for example, when we have like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we have a really bad case of fire blight, and El Cerrito had used pear tree, ornamental pear trees in the streets, and now El Cerrito doesn't have a lot of trees because of that. So it is really important that we know when we're doing our planting what is susceptible. You know, rhododendrons are really susceptible to thrips. Well, you want to have a rhododendron, have a rhododendron. Don't put 20 rhododendrons in your garden, because as soon as one gets them and you can't control it or you didn't see it, all of them are gonna get it. So then maybe diversity, you know, like have the right plant, and if you want to have a plant that is susceptible, so yes, have it, but you generate some diversity on it. So like that, it's not these monocrops, you know. Prune at the best time. I have been a really strong advocate in pruning and thinning, because that reduces the pests and diseases in the plants. So don't prune so harsh. That can be another one that I should put there. Add plants that bring the beneficial insects in your garden. You know, part of the design, we should think about that. Adding plants that repel pests. That is another thing that we can do in the cultural. So pretty much before the gardens, before the pest gets there. Now, biological insects. Why I'm putting this here? I'm not really an expert on this, but one of the things that I got a lot of questions is, oh my God, look at this insect. What should I spray on? And I realized, oh, you know what? This insect is good for us. This insect is beneficial. Actually, you know what? The funny thing is I went to vacations. I went to Greece, and they had a lot of well, they had a lot of like mantids. And the funny thing is that I will be like, oh my God, the mantids, but they look a little bit different. They're like a little bit bigger or something. I don't know. Maybe I was not in my garden in mind, but they will go inside the house. You will go inside the room, not the house, but because I was in a hotel. But I was kind of like, okay, they are too much, you know, and I get it. But what I'm trying to say is like, we need to learn that these insects may look kind of like terrifying for some of us in some moments, but if we learn to recognize them, and we will learn to recognize them in the whole cycle of their life, or the life cycle, you will be and you don't have to learn every single insect. Just learn these ones that I put in this screen. Is going to be a big help for your garden anyway. So the ladybugs, you know, a lot of them, they eat the same animals, the same other insects. So you just have to learn that the ladybugs look really weird in the larvae stage, but they are ladybugs anyway. They eat aphids, mites, mealybugs, and leafhoppers. The green lace wings, those are also like, looks really terrifying to me. I'm not like a big insect person, but you know, the way I have deal with it is the more that I learn about it, the more that I see them, the more that I get used to them, the better I feel. So there we go. So we have the soldier beetles. Those are actually not like, they don't eat a lot of things, just aphids, but they are really good pollinators. So, and you have like bright flowers will bring them to the garden. So if you put a garden with a lot of bright flowers, the soldier beetles will come. So we have spiders, and then the mites, you know, like, so just be aware that a lot of these insects are good for your garden, and wide spectrum insecticides will kill them. So you are really not only killing the aphid that you want to kill, but you are killing everything with it. Then the mechanical. So we talk about the mechanical at the beginning, about cleaning the fall leaves, cleaning the annuals, cleaning the perennials. We are talking about putting barriers, you know, for the golfers, you can put the barrier baskets. I still put them, especially like with big trees. I generate my own baskets so I can have a big barrier, and I make sure that the plant will survive. So for example, for the rats, one of the things I see a lot is the rats are eating the bark, not the bark, but they go through the bark and they get the cambium, where the veins of the trees are, I guess. So they are feeding like that, and what they do is they go and eat all the bark and the cambium. That can kill the tree, that can kill the branch. So one of the things is use this rat control bark protection thing. You paint it and they stop eating it, or they will not go in the parts that you had painted it. So usually what I do is in citrus, on the houses that I see that the rats are eating the plants, or just mulching a little bit, in the bark, I use this IB Organics paint on the bark, and they have different colors, and I use the brown, is light brown, but it doesn't look so bad. And you have to do it every year, but it's a really good protection. It works actually. The insect, this one, for example, is the Happy Frog. This is a fertilizer I'm putting here because this one says here contains calcium, which helps prevent the blossoms, and I got this from their website, and build strong cell walls, boosting the plant ability to resist diseases. So that is one of the things that we can use as a mechanical. Then we have the golfer baskets and the daffodils. The daffodils are really good. Golfers don't usually feed on them molds either, wolves either. So any of these creatures that like to do little the root systems and destroy our plants, they don't really like daffodils. So I try to put daffodils throughout my fruit trees and stuff like that, so at least they will not get through. The other thing that we can think is, some of the pests that we have in our gardens, like white flies. If you have a minor infestation of white flies, everything that you have to do is get your hose, put it in really strong spray, and spray your plant as hard as you can. That is gonna kill you little white flies. And you can do that, like I do it in my deck. With my pots when I have them, and I just have to do it maybe 3 times, but it works. So chemical controls. The chemical controls is something that I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about it, because I have been changing, and finally I found something that I feel kind of comfortable with. And the reason why I'm also talking about these chemical controls is because I have heard a lot about, oh, you just, spray with dormant oils or neem oil for preventing for pests. That is not something we want to do. IPM is one of the things that say, this is your last resort. For me, this is your last step. Like, don't, as soon as you see an insect, don't go and buy something to spray with. Do all your cultural, mechanical, biological before you get here. So when you have your chemical, I have made the homework for you. I had sit down hours and hours and hours looking every single bottle to see what they have. And this is the thing. I put here what it is for and what the materials they have. So, they are made from, I guess. So all of them have it here, and these ones too. So, and these ones, one of the things that I put them, highlight them, is because they have the 10% or 30% of other ingredients. I'm not particularly too happy about that. And that's why my use of the pesticides had gone from being, oh yeah, I use copper, to use just these 5 if you can. And the reason is because, you get the neem oil, and the neem oil has 30%, 70% of neem oil, and they have 30% of others. So you don't really know what you are putting there. So for example, a week ago, I went to a garden and I had to spray, and they have the beehives right under the trees. I don't know why they did that, but they did it. And I don't think it's functional, and I don't think it's safe, not for the people that works on it, and not for the bees, because anything that you're gonna do, you're gonna disturb them. If I'm gonna go and prune the trees, anything that falls in that beehives, they're gonna get stressed, they're gonna go and beat me, So, but anyway, it's there. So I was kind of like, well, what do I do? What do I spray with? And my client keep asking me, well, let me know what you're gonna spray. And I tell the gal that works with the bees. And then I have to say, one of the things is when you say neem oil, you look and you have other ingredients, and other ingredients means I don't know what I'm putting in this thing. I have there is one that is all seasonal dormant and all season spray, and it's like 98% mineral oil. And when you go and search what mineral oil means, is petroleum oil, petroleum materials that we don't know where they are. So I don't like to use things like that. I use them just when I really have to. So right now I'm really happy because I found things that I know, these three, I know exactly what they have. The fungicide, the sulfur fungicide. I like it because I have at least it's 90% and I have only 10% of unknown ingredients. And you cannot find this information anywhere. What those unknown ingredients are, you don't know. So in this case, we have the insecticide repellent. This is not gonna kill the pests. This is gonna make them go away. And so, for example, the garlic. So that, for example, is one that this season, if I have thrips in my rhododendrons, you know, so instead of letting the thrip go and overwinter in the soil, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean those leaves and I am gonna put a little bit of this garlic in the soil as well, not in the plant, but in the soil. So like that, the plant, the pest is not overwintering in my garden. Then you have, and everything it has is garlic and water. And it does smell like garlic. Actually, it kind of like gave me like, oh my God, this is too much garlic smell for me. But anyway, mites and insects. This will hit mites and some insects. So this is the one that I am putting, for example, it doesn't say that it kill aphids, but you know, I was kind of like, well, let's try it, because at least I know I have all these things that I necessarily don't think that are so bad for the environment. And they are, in the way that this works is that, you know, the more natural they are, yes, you do have to apply a little bit more and a little bit more often, but in a way that is good for nature, because like that doesn't mean you are killing, and you are killing for long periods of time. So this one is one that kills insects. And then, so what I did with these thrips before they go over winter, I spray with these mites and insects, and then I put this in the ground. I spray this in the ground, you know, so, and I did my cleaning, and then I put mulch, the compost, so I did it all. Powdery mildew. So this one is supposed to be a fungicide. It says there fungicide. When you look at the label, it actually, the only thing that it kills is powdery mildew. So, but you know, we can try in other things, but for sure, what I like again is all the materials are there. Everything, the only one I didn't put is water. So try these three. If you have any insects, you want to repel any insects going in your soil to overwinter, and see if this will help with fungicides. I feel more comfortable with these ones because, again, I can see all the ingredients on them. Then I have the sulfur fungicide is something that I use for stone fruits when they have cankers. Cankers is something really common in the area and in the stone fruits. So I use that for that reason. Insecticides, I do use the neem oil when, you know, I have a major thing and if this is not working. Since I found these ones, I'm trying really hard to use only these ones just because of the ingredients. I don't put any chemical to prevent pests from coming in my garden, because a lot of these chemicals work with the touch. So if it touch it, so then it will kill it. And so preventing for pests is not with the chemicals. Foliage irrigation. So the one thing that, just to go really fast with foliage irrigation, because there are few things I want you to take in mind, and they are like the three first points here. Adjusting the irrigation for fall is important, and what you want to do is you want to do deep watering and less often. So for example, Usually when you have drip irrigation, you are running the drip irrigation like 25 minutes, 30 minutes, something around that. If you're running in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's too little and you're wasting your water. You want to try to do 20 to 30 minutes or more, depending on the tree or the plant, and then do it less often. So if you are adjusting to fall, so what I suggest to my clients is use the same amount of time that you use in summer. So if in summer was 20 minutes, you are gonna use still 20 minutes in fall, but you are you are gonna, instead of watering like you water in summer every other day or every 2 days, you can say, okay, I water every 4 days or every 5 days. So that is how I adjust irrigation for fall. You leave the same amount of time, but you do it less often. Do not. So one of the things that a lot of people do is they turn off irrigation completely in fall. I know we have a really strong rain. I am not saying water when it's wet, but just be mindful that I had some of the trees that had been the most stressed is the trees that people just turn off the irrigation in fall after the first rain and forgot about it, or decided, there is a lot of humidity and there is fog, and then we have these hot days, like sunny days like today, and maybe this rain will help the plant for 2-3 weeks, but after 3 weeks, if it's still dry like that, we need to turn on the irrigation. Using the right irrigation system is important, of course, and I don't hate pop-ups. Sometimes pop-ups are good irrigation system to use. However, like that is right now I use them for like really small plants and ground covers that need to be watered, and try to anyway use like I have this no more lawn that is drought tolerant. So yes, I do have pop-ups on that. I raise it up when one of my clients, they raise up, they water, and they water once a week. That is a good system. It's just that we were using it only for grasses. So don't get side-minded that pop-ups are bad. Just be mindful, use them in early morning or late night, so you are not wasting your water. Put the heads that actually water the right parts of the garden, all that stuff. But pop-ups are not bad, are actually really low maintenance and reliable. It's just that we want to make sure that we are using the right system. Yeah.
Elizabeth, let's see, it's 11 o'clock. People are wondering about pruning, and maybe we should jump to pruning.
Yeah, sorry about that. So pruning. So this is what I wanted to mention about pruning. So one of the things that we want to do about pruning is conifers. Conifers, this is the time to do conifers. You have junipers, you want to reduce, you have your Italian pines that you can clean up inside, you have your potocarpus, Chamacypres pines, anything that you have about conifers, this is the time to do it. So the reason why I am putting conifers as fall pruning, well, is about, this is a pest prevention. So when we cut the conifers we can cut conifers from fall to winter. And the reason is because at these times, conifers are less susceptible for pests to come in and get in, make a house out of these plants, or just eat them and kill them. So the beetles. So it is really important to have that in mind. And the good thing about fall pruning conifers is a lot of the times we forget about these plants and they overgrow, and then now we are doing the fire protection. We want to reduce them really hard. We want to clean them out of our paths, remove them remove them from houses and roofs. So this is a good time to do this big pruning in conifers. I also do the cleaning in the debris inside the conifers, because that also is a place where a lot of pests and diseases will overwinter and make homes. So that is one. The other one is a good time to prune plants away from houses and roofs. That is something that I do myself throughout different gardens. Citrus, I try to remind people to harvest the fruit that is ready. So some of the people don't frequently harvest their lemons, for example. Maybe oranges and mandarins will not be ready, but the lemons will be, lemons and limes. So some of them. So try to harvest some to mitigate those branches to break with really storm and heavy winds. Then the perennials, we talk about it. The sages, I try to reduce some of the sages when they have legginess. Is a good time. I know that they have few flowers, but legginess in the plant is not going to give you that much of flower show. So that is what I try to do. And when you are cutting back your sages, what I do is I try to cut to green. So don't cut a lot to the dead, but I try to cut to some green. Wherever I see foliage, wherever I see a little bit of green, I cut to it. It's a good time to prune the hydrangeas. We have a seminar for that I did, so please look at that. It's a good time to prune camellias sasanquas, not the japonicas. I also have that in a video I did for the slopes webinar, so you can do some of that pruning. You can, this is the things that you don't want to prune. So be aware of be aware that fall pruning weakens deciduous plants. So they kind of like stunt them, and because what you are doing is you are removing foliage, and you are the tree is preparing for that dormancy, and that is something that is happening that is kind of like putting them off to do what they're supposed to be doing at the time. Also, they are putting energy in the root system. So when you prune these trees at this time, you are removing some of that foliage that is helping the tree photosynthesize and putting energy in the root system. So just be aware that fall pruning is something that weakens your trees and stunt them. So what are the things that you don't want to prune? You don't want to prune oak, olives, pears, and succulents. And the reason is, well, oak and olives, they can get disease, and diseases that spray with the rain. So usually, you can prune oaks and olives all the way from spring to early fall. So do those at that time. I cannot hear you.
Sorry, folks, I was muted there. Okay, you are back, Elizabeth.
Okay.
And I think we need to wind it up probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the pruning.
Yeah. So yeah. So those are the things that we don't want to do, like just because of the flowers. That was actually it.
Okay. Uh, Let me see here if I can find any more questions for you. Let's see. Marissa asks for a little discussion about the difference between cut back, and prune. I think that's an interesting question.
Well, so I will say that so cut back, well, cut is kind of like a general expression, but cut back is you is kind of like reduction. So you are gonna reduce, and when you cut back, you can you want to leave something. So, like when we talk about annuals, so when you are removing the whole annual, so you are not really cutting back, you are cutting. Oof. When you are cutting back, you are cutting to something. So hopefully, yeah, you have some leaves or buds, so you are cutting to something. Pruning, no, pruning, I will say, it's kind of like selectively cutting things. So it's kind of like you don't do a general cutting, but you are saying, okay, I'm cutting this one to this point, I'm not cutting this one, I'm reducing this one, and that's kind of like how we will differentiate them.
I would just add some things are really easy to define. These are not really easy terms to define, but for instance, if I'm giving myself a haircut, oops, I don't have much to cut here, but I might pull up some hair and cut. And I do the same thing with plants sometimes. If they're real bushy perennials, for instance, some of the salvias, you could just grab a bunch of the branches and clip them, and it doesn't really matter exactly where you cut because they have so many buds, they're going to pop right back out again. If it's a woodier plant that has buds farther apart, then you want to be more selective about where you're going to cut or prune, because it matters which bud grows. And just as an example, you don't want the bud growing into the inside of the plant necessarily. You'd rather have it growing outside. So you would select an outside bud, and that's just an example. That's a great question, because those terms we use all the time, but we don't define them very well. Let's see. Taking dead branches out of citrus, is this a good time to do that?
Yeah, I would say yes. The reason why I kind of like hesitate is I have to thinking, is there any disease? But in general, that is something that if you don't have any diseases going around your garden, it's a good time to cut them. Yeah.
Yeah, my general feeling is that anytime you find a broken or dead branch, it can be removed. It's not really doing much for the plant, and it is something that can harbor diseases. So generally speaking, you're safe to take dead things out. And generally when you're pruning, that's the first thing you want to do, is remove the dead stuff, or broken stuff.
Yeah, I think that if I can add something, I think that question comes with don't even remove dead out of like pears or stuff like that. And the reason is because when you remove dead, if you remove it right, you are actually going all the way to living tissue. So with plants that had diseases already, like fire blight or the cankers, and now we have these rains, so then it will not be a good idea, because then you have those open wounds when the water and the rain and the spores are flying around.
Okay, so that can wash spores into the wound and spread the disease. That makes sense. What about apple trees? Is this a good time to prune apple trees?
So I will say if your tree is fully defoliated, it's a good time to cut apple trees. If your tree is still with a lot of the leaves, no, it's not a good time because again, fall pruning will stunt your tree. Apple trees are deciduous trees. So that means this time of the year, the tree is putting the energy into the system, the tree needs that foliage. So as soon as they fully lose their leaves, it's a good time to prune them.
So that's a good general rule for deciduous trees, since they're taking the energy back out of the leaves and putting them into the roots and the trunk for storage. You want to let them go through that process.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kim would like some clarification on deadheading. I don't think we talked much about deadheading here, but first of all, there's one school of thought that says don't deadhead because what you're taking off is the seeds that the birds are going to eat and need, and that we should all be developing a new aesthetic that includes the end of the life of the plant or the flower and not just the part where the flower is blooming. But having said that, how do you go about deadheading?
I think that for me, deadheading is, yeah, I think that I adjust to my clients, I guess. So some people really don't want to see the flowers. So I deadhead some of the flowers, like for example, hydrangeas. I kind of like go and prune them a little bit earlier because I actually want to get that hydrangea on to get dry and have it in the garden. So other ones I do try to leave, even for example, for the roses, I even try to leave, let the rose go through even the stage of fruit, because you know, like fruits, some of the roses I eat them, the rose fruit, and birds like them. So yes, I do go with that. However, some of my clients say, hey, see the flower dead. So I do go and deadhead sometimes. And what I do, because I think it's not worth to pay me for deadheading, what I do is kind of like after the flower, I, instead of just deadheading, I do my general pruning. So I go a little bit farther and shape the plant and fix the plant and thin out the plant or do anything I need to do with the pruning and not just the heading. So that's one of the things I do with the heading. So that is the beauty about nature, you know, you have a philosophy, you have a way to see it, you can adjust, you can learn, or you can do it your way.
Well, that's wonderful. I think we probably should wrap it up here. I want to remind everybody that the webinar is available to review again or to look at the slides if you want to on the SLOAT website starting on Tuesday usually. And previous webinars are available there as well. And so, for instance, someone asked about pruning Japanese or taking care of Japanese maples. And there's a previous webinar, which I suspect that Elizabeth did, on the SLOAT website that was from February this year on Japanese maples, which are one of Elizabeth's specialties. And so I encourage you to look at what's available there. There's also a YouTube channel that SLOAT has where you can find the previous webinars. So we'll hope to see you all or some of you next Saturday at 10 o'clock for Jen's program on making the wreaths, holiday succulent wreaths and centerpieces. And many, many thanks to Elizabeth for the presentation. And I will sign us all off at this point.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye now.